CS greetings, CS goers. I'm Extremes, and this beautiful person on my right is actually well. There's two people there. They could be Siamese twins. I don't know. Definitely the prettier of the two, zerOch4Nce.
Yeah. I hope my wife doesn't watch this. You're in deep shit.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, until you spoke, you could have been a woman. For our uninitiated viewers.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. My online reputation precedes me.
Yeah, well, we both suffer in that area, I guess. But
Yeah.
it comes with saying what you think. I think is the problem. But it's a pleasure to have you. I mean, we've worked a bit hard to make this happen. Not easy with you living on a farm and all.
Yeah. No. Thank you very much for having me. Things have been a bit hectic, and unfortunately, our times haven't really been coming together. But here we are, finally.
Yeah, well, finally, let me give you a quick introduction, dear viewers, to this beautiful man. Unfortunately, no webcam. I mean, you live what 50 k's from the nearest place that you could possibly buy one.
Yeah.
So,
Guys can't expect me to have webcams everywhere on a farm out in the middle of nowhere, surely.
yeah, what is this? 1898 or?
Yeah, no, we're slowly but surely integrating technology into agriculture, guys. It's baby steps.
Oh, fantastic. So, zerOch4Nce has got a long history playing at the top level of SACS. Such a long history, in fact, that his baby face belies his seniority in years. Yeah, although I think I'm probably older than you. But, you've been a primary AWPer at stages. You've been an extremely cunning and guileful in-game leader. And James has been a senior figure in developing young and highly talented players that have gone on to become superstars. I mean, there's some interesting names that have crossed your teams over the years, and of course, Mr. James zerOch4Nce's abrasive approach, which I've already mentioned, hasn't always won in popularity, but one cannot deny the man's achievements and influence and impact in South African CS. So, absolutely honored to have you, and I'm honored to have beaten you once.
Oh, thank you very much. And yes, you always will have that over me. And I was really proud of the way you guys played that day, so I had no issues losing. And this is obviously my opinion on screen. I have other ones that I'll maybe share with you over a beer, but
Yeah, well, okay, well that's my 87 and 0 moment out. Like the delusional nip fans, I also have my delusions of grandeur, and I've worked it out my system now. So we're ready to make this happen. So, t-
yeah, okay.
yeah, tell us a little bit about your life as a farmer. I think that's actually quite interesting. I mean, you're quite isolated with where you are, and somehow you're balancing family life. I mean, we see your lovely wife there, the farming and a CS career.
Yeah, it's pretty challenging, but I must say I love it, and I think that's partly what makes everything, possible. Um, we came out to the farm about 3 years ago, and my father had basically started this little beef project, and I had just finished university. I studied animal science, and we moved out to the farm, and we sort of took that beef business and grew it. And now recently, we've started leasing fruit orchards, and I'm sort of using that as a learning experience, a university experience, if you can say. And we're going to now this year plant our first orchard on our side of our farm, and yeah, we definitely are keen on growing as I think to around 50 hectares, which will be a nice big unit.
Wow, that's pretty sizable.
Yeah. I think that in terms of balancing CS and farm life, it's really tough. But I find the only way I'm able to do it and still give the team the hours that it requires is to be really organized. And I think if you're not, if you it the way things are going in the local scene and the amount of hours that players are putting in, especially I would say the energy and bravado guys, that they're pretty much close to being pro players. Unfortunately, not yet with proper salaries, but we're all holding thumbs. I've got to be organized. Otherwise, it won't work.
Yeah, well, it must be quite a balancing act, sort of akin to riding a unicycle off road while spinning plates on sticks or something around you.
Yeah.
So
I'm also I'm privileged to have a wife that really wants me to push my big passions in life, and she's fully supportive, and that helps because I don't think many women would put up with the amount of time that I I put into games and being competitive.
Yeah, well, I think it's like any passion in a marriage, and I don't mean the husbandly wifely passion. I mean the thing that you do that kind of keeps you sane. Sometimes it does drive y- y- your opposite numbers, so to speak, a little bit crazy. In your case, you're very fortunate to have somebody who actually supports you, because I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Well, good to hear that you're keeping it going, keeping the farm going, and just the one question in that though, I got to say is in farm hashtag farm life probably requires a lot of really early mornings, and CS requires a lot of really late nights. When do you sleep, man?
Yeah, about sleep. Not, I mean, especially lately with us being so busy with officials and trying to squeeze in practice before games. It's sleep is not really something that I'm very used to, but I'm at least I'm not a dairy farmer. You know, those guys are up at 3 in the morning and they're milking 3 times a day. So
Unbelievable.
I'm just taking the positive out of the situation.
Wow. Well, and it's probably nice to live in a beautiful part of the world, which I'm sure helps takes the edge off the terrible internet.
Yeah, no, I'm very sport out here. It's absolutely stunning in the Overberg, and yeah, I think that as you said, the only real weakness has been the internet. And ever since I left varsity, where I had really stable, good DSL, it's been a consistent struggle, and it just shows me how crazy passionate, scary passionate I am for this game because uh, it doesn't even sometimes make sense when I think about it. Me getting onto a server and having to go through that and compete at the level that we're trying to compete at least. But yeah, actually 3 days ago, the guys upgraded my site, and positive news is that so far so good. I hope I'm not jinxing this, guys. But so
Let's hope
far
not.
so good. My ping's been exceptional for the last 3 days, and I'm really stoked.
Well, that's good. I mean, you could be on terrible fiber like I am, so there's also obviously also that option where the thing drops the whole time and doesn't work at the proper speed and gives you 400 ping. So
Yeah, I
thank you,
just
Vodacom,
speak to
by the way.
Ashton. Speak to Ashton. I'm sure he can tell you many stories.
I think your whole team can probably identify. I think F3 this year has been the year of potato internet.
Oh, it's been hell of a frustrating. It's been so hard sometimes to even measure progress because there's so many different factors going into a game. Not only are you trying to incorporate a new player, or we've done it actually 3 new players over the last 3 months, which has been in itself tough. You also now dealing with 3 people sometimes at a time lagging, and that leads people to get angry and emotional. And how are you supposed to operate or be effective like that? It's very tough. It's very tough.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's super frustrating when you're playing online and that happens. I mean, of course, you go to LAN and everything's relatively stable except for when it gets DDoSed. But
Yeah.
it kind of changes
Shout
the
out to
dynamic.
Flexi.
Yeah, definitely shout out there. Yeah, well, we'll move on from that one swiftly. Or maybe we'll get back to it later. I mean, it is
We
St.
can come
Paddy's
back to it.
Day. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe we should imbibe a little bit as we do this video, and we can kind of get back to it. Grow in brazenness as we go along. Now, talking about online, I mean, that's not something I particularly plan to ask you, but I mean, we're seeing a lot of online play at the moment. Very little LAN yet, and I mean, the LANs are still coming. But I mean, do you feel it's a good thing that potentially big money competitions are pretty much online only at the moment?
Personally, I think it's really, really terrible because I think it's no myth that South Africa has always and is still struggling with internet. I mean, even though fiber is being rolled out, some of the people I know, as you yourself said, and Ashton, struggle with their fiber. It's inconsistent, and they have the same struggles that maybe normal DSL users have.
Yep.
That's coupled with the advantage of a player that is sitting on, a LAN ping or a fiber ping on a server compared to a player sitting with, 50 to 100 ms it's ridiculous. It's not fair at all. And now you want to put money in the mix, and it gets a bit tense. So I really do think that there's nothing wrong with having qualifications online to a point, and that may be justifying seeding into a LAN competition. But when it comes to real money, which a lot of these companies are now starting to get on board with, it definitely needs to be on LAN so that people after a competition like that feel like the best team in the country walked away with the money.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there as well. I mean, again, talking about fiber, I mean, like when mine works great, I mean, I'm getting like 5 or 10 ping, which is tremendous. But even that, when you play against somebody who's got like say 120, I'll have ducked behind a corner and already be running away, and then somehow I'll be dead because like the server side thing has picked up
Yeah.
that I was there 120 milliseconds ago. It's
Yeah.
like,
So I suppose as you're saying now, it goes both ways, but the result is you can't play competitive CS like
no,
that. That's a joke. I mean, come on.
no, it's super difficult. I mean, again, like LAN is the great equalizer, so it does put you in the situation where everybody's on the same foot. And I mean, it does, especially for AWPers, I think it does cause you to have to adjust the way you shoot a little bit, because I mean, the AWP, I think it feels like the weapon that's the most affected, I guess, by that sort of thing, in the sense that high ping AWPing actually is quite easy, compared to low ping AWPing in a way. But
Yes,
yeah, well, you'd know about that, right? So
absolutely. Yeah.
it's just weird how the netcode works in CS, and I think that lack of consistency is an issue, because also if you're a player used to playing say 120 ping with an AWP and you go to LAN, you'll get absolutely wrecked if you try peek those angles the way you do online.
Yeah. 100%. It's actually in the earlier part of my CS career something that I actually found I needed to adapt to. Coming from playing in Cape Town and generally playing with 50 ms on Johannesburg servers to my first national LAN where that feeling of being on LAN, how smooth it is and how responsive it is. It plays with your movement, it plays with your aim, and that's something that a player needs to obviously develop with over time.
Yeah, I had no such issues. Joburg, playing Joburg servers, getting like 15 ping. It's beautiful, man.
Easy mode.
Easy mode, yeah. Um, not that I had easy mode of my career; it was very short. But let's move on from that. Let's talk about your early days in your playing career. I mean, when did it become serious for you? And I gather you were quite the sportsman as a younger person as well. I mean, like, well, why did you choose CS over that?
Yeah, so I first played CS in an internet cafe in Cape Town with friends of mine. I think I was about 13 years old. It was like 1.2 or 1.3
Oh yeah, we still
CS.
had the crosshair on the AWP unscoped. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
basically, you know what I'm talking about. And like I was instantly addicted to it, and just the competing against another person, obviously compared to the normal games that I had been brought up with like Doom, Warcraft, where it was just really campaign and grinding. I never had internet at home. So that was a big thrill, and I think, unfortunately for me, if you compared to the current generation, my parents were very much against it, because they did believe. I mean, I came from a sporting background. My family was really into sports, and they made sure that I also played sport at school. So my high school or my teens was all about sport over Saturdays and weekends, and if I'm lucky, go on tour. And I was only really able to sit down and focus on CS when I went to varsity at the age of 18, where I just, there was no team sport. So, my team activity went to CS, and that's where things just started to blossom. I put a huge amount of time in my first year, subsequently dropped out, but learned a lot anyway. Learned how to drink at Stellenbosch. It was fantastic.
Well, that's the best place, right?
Yeah, no, it was a great year of education. Yeah, so put a lot of time and effort in when I was 18, and got an opportunity to play, I think, at ESWC 2006 with a bunch of, I think, two experienced guys, Titan and Jin and Smoking Toe, which were all these sort of old, experienced Counter-Strike players, and they gave me a shot, basically. And I just completely fell in love. From the moment I joined that server and competed, I just knew that this is really something I wanted to give a massive, go.
Well, that's pretty awesome. I mean, a lot of people would have experienced that growing up, where your parents don't really want you to game; they want you to do something else, make something of your life, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But of course, there's the other very disingenuous kind of thing that comes out nowadays, where it's like, "Hey kids, look, esports is a thing. If you pretty much ignore your education and do whatever you want and don't listen to your parents, you could be famous like Stewie2K."
Yeah,
Okay,
that's dangerous.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
super
carry on.
dangerous. Eh? Oh yeah, yeah. That video was of Stewie 2K, very inspirational. Got the great inspirational guitar track happening.
But
So
what are you saying to the younger
oh
generation?
jeez, it's so
Yeah,
stupid. Eh? I
scary.
mean, it worked for him, but I mean, there's probably a lot of unemployed mid to late 20s kids who tried the same thing. So
Who believe?
yeah, like believing is not enough. This is not a Disney
Yeah,
movie, kids.
yeah.
Get your education. So I mean, what was the first decent team you were in those many moons ago? I mean,
Well, I played for so many teams, but I think the first real one where I remember us, going and boot camping and putting a serious amount of time not only into, just joining and scrimming and free fall servers was probably PM, which was founded by Gandalf, and it had subsequent up and coming Cape Town players basically join it, and that included, I think it was Frost, myself, Rachno, Hathor, and Lox, and we would land over weekends. We would talk about ways to get better as a team, and that eventually led us, I think, to going and competing at ESWC 2007 at Emperor's Palace. And yeah, that was the start of it all, at least the understanding of what was required in a team to be successful. And yeah, I think after that competition, I went overseas for a year gap year and came back, and I think I started playing with Unreal, Style, and Halon, and that was the team that I think was the best team that I ever played in. I mean, I learned so much as a player, and I base a lot of that off Rian. I think he taught me to look at the game completely differently, and he taught me what it really meant to get people to work together in a team. And he did it via a lot of shouting, which I wasn't used to in the beginning, because when you're a youngster and you've got a lot of aim and you just bullying people on the server, for someone to sit you down and say, "What are you doing? That is the dumbest." So what if you can out aim him? That's just a really stupid move. You need to be considering how does that affect the rest of your team, and what is the impact on that in the round later. So he was a big influence, and that obviously led me to CS:GO.
so the transition to CS:GO, did you think it was as shit a game as everybody else said at the time, or did you take to it a bit more quickly than others?
I think initially in 2012, when all of us had made the decision that we were going to change from 1.6 to CS:GO, because I think Chris also brought it up. The community when Source came out was very divided, and it sort of led to the death of both communities. Source eventually died, 1.6 eventually died, and so we saw opportunity in the sense, or there was a possibility that, well, maybe these two communities come together and something big happens. And to a point, I mean, it has. I mean, it did see two huge communities come together, and now we've got probably one of the biggest communities in the country. Sorry, I lost my train of thought now. What was the original question? Sorry.
Well, not so much of a question, but I mean, CS:GO
Can
when it
beep
came
that out.
yeah, what's the fuck? Um, yeah, I mean, CS:GO was to be fair to CS:GO, it wasn't a very well sorted game when it came out. It was pretty
Yeah,
buggy, and I mean, I recall at the time when I took a big break between high school and much later in my life between playing games. Like I literally played nothing, and I actually had the choice in sort of 2012, 2013 of, hey, I want to get playing again.
yeah.
Maybe I'll do something competitive. And I looked at CS:GO and I'm like, not a fuck.
Yeah,
It's
no, it
just like,
was basically that's what I was saying. It was, we took a risk, I think, and we jumped over to CS:GO, and initially it was pretty scary. I mean, I remember playing on deathmatch servers and being like, "There's so much wrong with this game," and hopefully it just gets better. And luckily for us, it did. There were one or two very big updates that sort of you could just feel everyone was very interested now. Now that this has been sorted and fixed, we're not going to cry anymore. We're going to move on and we're going to play this game. And yeah, that just it's. I think we got a few players got together that had played together in the previous versions, whether it was Source and 1.6, and formed teams. And I think in 2013 we had our first LAN at Internet Solutions LAN, and Bravado had a lineup, DC had a lineup, I had formed a lineup with SSG, with Goals, Phantom, Supply, who was a Source player, um, Warren. I can't now remember his name, his in-game name.
Which one?
Anyway, was there we go, was,
Okay, yes.
and we formed that team, and that team went on to the finals, even though the groups worked out in such a way that I probably think Energy was better at the time. Nearfun's team, they probably would have beaten us. I think they actually had beaten us in the tournament earlier, but they got knocked. It worked out that they got knocked out before the finals. But yeah, we ended up going to the final and then losing to DC. But one of the biggest catches there was previously I had played 1.6 with Elusive in XTC, and he came to that LAN with Nate, and he had a stellar LAN, and I spoke to him and I said, listen, are you not keen on actually taking this seriously and giving it a good go? Because I knew Ron had exceptional talent. And that sort of led to the next edition of SSG, which was the Goals, Elusive, zerOch4Nce, Phantom, and Supply.
That's crazy. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a lot of people will know the names that you speak of, which is I think a good thing because I think there is a bit of a disconnect in the history of South African CS in the sense that the more recent fans don't really know too much about 1.6 history or source history or anything like that,
Yeah.
and that's part of my objective in talking to guys like yourself. It's interesting to hear these names and go, wait, that guy's still around. Wow, you know. Um, I think this is super interesting to fans. So I mean, we are have obviously gotten on to go here, but I'd like to rewind it once more and just say, during the 1.6 era, was there any point there where you considered moving to Source, or was it
Um,
always just kind of like Source is a shit game?
yes, it was always Source was a shit game, but I do look. I competed at two Rages, I think, for Source. And it was both times it was basically a team that knew I played 1.6 at a relatively high level, and they wanted me to come and sub for them for the tournament. And I was just like, whatever, I love the competition. I'll definitely come, install the game and try to play it. I think my biggest frustration with the game, even though like mechanically I couldn't really understand it, was that it literally just was running around with a deagle shooting someone in the face all the time. And if you weren't good at doing that, you just got wrecked. And I also had to play against Clips, who, geez, that guy probably was the best source dealer, him and La Sombra in the whole country, and it's demoralizing after a while. So you just move on.
Yeah, getting shat on isn't always good. I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes it's good for motivation, but when you know that it's never ever possible for you, this it's
it's
also
time to move
difficult.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, but in 1.6, I mean, how many trophies did you actually collect during that period? I mean, do you have a cupboard full of them now, or?
No, not at all, not at all. I did really well at a few of the first editions at Carnage in Cape Town, where we won a few lands. But nationally, I think my best placing was second, and that was with that team in 2011 with Rian, Haaland, Hazard, and Unreal. And besides that, it was top 5 finishes at the rest of the national lands.
Okay, so pretty varied career then. You've been near the top and also not quite made it to the court to the semis and stuff at times as well, which is,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess, it's
No,
character
there's
building, you know.
my time with CS has been some serious lows and some serious highs, and I think yeah, some big learning curves.
Yeah, mine was short enough that I didn't have too many losses, which was good. The only big
That's
ones were
always nice. Yeah,
the only big ones were really where you like. I mean, I got 300 hours under my belt, and I'm playing Bravado and MM Masters. It's like, okay, of course I'm gonna get shat on. You know, this is what's gonna
yeah.
happen.
No, that's rough. That's rough.
Um, Oh yeah, dude. I mean, I didn't have a lot of hours at any point in 2015. Work was busy, so had to make it work. But
Well, that's an achievement in itself. I mean, if you knew and you still, as you said, getting to DGC and upsetting teams that have been people who have been playing longer than you and putting in more time, that's a good achievement.
oh, thank you, appreciate it. I guess for us, I mean, this is maybe something we can talk about a little bit, but for us, our whole approach, I mean, for people who don't know, I played in SSG Shock. We had a very tactical approach because we knew we didn't have the necessarily the overall skill level to compete with the top guys. So our objective was to try to play smarter and to I mean, you couldn't anti-strat. Let's put that on the table. I mean, there were no demos available from DGL, and to a large degree, they still aren't. So you like, how do you can't go and look at somebody and say what they do. You have to play them during the course of the year. And I think our ace on the whole was the fact that we played little enough that we got away with people not quite figuring us out. So um, yeah, it's difficult, but I mean, for you, you're an in-game leader now. You have been both that and just a regular player, and I mean, you're quite aware of what goes into to preparing the tactics for for what you can unleash
Yeah,
on your opponents and all of that. And I mean, it
yeah.
is tremendously time consuming. I kind of feel, having been a caster a bit and I guess doing some analysis work in some of the videos I've done, when I look at a lot of what South African CS teams get up to on servers, I mean, I can see that there isn't always a tremendous amount of tactical preparation. I mean, there's a lot of this sort of, hey, I'm going to shoot the guy in the face, and he goes and does it, and he shoots the guy in the face, and that's the extent of the tactics at times. But
Yeah.
there are also teams that are quite structured in the way they play. I mean, if I look at you guys at the moment, of course, you got your internet issues, but there's is a lot of structure to what you do. How do you see that in local CS? I mean, to me, in the last year since I've been watching more closely, I've noticed it's become more structured as I've continued to watch it. But is it still where it needs to be in terms of the tactical prowess of local teams?
Yeah, I think it still is a fair way to go, and I think if you compare the scene um, 2 years ago to the scene now, it was really just bravado and energy, putting in the hours and the strats and the boot camping and the ghosting, because it was at that point where we were so evenly matched that it was how much work are you going to put in to win. And I don't think the other teams had that motivation. If you're not winning a competition and you're always coming third, fourth, and fifth, what is the real motivation to really step it up to that next level? Because it's a huge commitment. It's a huge type commitment, and I think the majority of people don't know that how much work a player like Detrony puts in every single day. I mean, I know when he first committed to CS:GO coming from Quake, initially he struggled because he hadn't committed the time necessary to the game. But the minute that guy put his mind to it and he actually started taking it seriously and putting the time in, you could see he grew to the player he is today. And I think that's what you're seeing throughout the scene now as well. The difference between people who understand how to practice effectively and how to measure themselves the entire time, and the people who, well, I'm just going to play 1,000 bots, aim bots, and I'm going to play 3 pickups and hopefully 2 team games in the week. And if I don't see progression in a year's time, well, I'm probably going to quit CS or do something else. I mean, you understand what I mean? So there's a completely different mentality to someone who is going to be successful in this game, and someone who is giving it a run, but maybe is expecting too much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can speak to that motivation thing as well. I mean, for me, I had to stop because I was busy, but also a large part of it was motivation. When you do well in tournaments and stuff, and then Telkom pulls out ye old masters and you're not in it, even though you finished high enough in the championship to justify that.
Yeah.
That's a serious demotivator. You
Mm.
go look at it and go, well, what am I doing this for? Because I mean, in our case, what we had was we basically played Prem Division, and there was two other teams that could potentially beat us, and then Energy who shat on us. So it was like, okay, why are we doing this again, guys? Like, let's play Energy.
How
Let's lose 16-4, and then let's go and shit on everybody else, and then play close matches with ballers and psycho pandas.
Yeah,
Just
so it's tough then to pinpoint exactly where the problems are and what you need to. Is that effective practice?
not at all, man. Like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
as you say. I think a lot of motivation comes from self, and for me, I had set the target that I'm going to in 2 years play at DGC and maybe within 3 years finish top eight, and I did all of that in the first year. So I was like, okay, well, am I gonna now grind in Prem where we just were for the last year, and
Mm.
there's no possibility of going to Masters because what people don't realize, yeah, and I mean you would know this, is that a year ago, or more than a year ago, there was no mention of any possibility of promotion relegation or any possibility of adding more teams. So
Yeah,
it was just literally, okay, well, that's your lot in life. That's where you're going to be. And there are no other competitions on the horizon because things like EVTech Champions League and stuff like that hadn't even shown up. So I, I'm almost 100% sure that several other teams probably went through the same sort of thing last year where they were like, okay, well, the only big entity that is here doesn't care about us, even though we're good enough to be there,
yeah,
sort of thing.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, and
I
that's a
mean,
pretty bad mentality to have if you're trying to take something seriously and push yourself to that next level. There's got to be some sort of inspiration that you're working towards. The CS community is famous for really always playing on pride, and that's where I come from. When I started in the scene, no one really ever looked at the prize pool. I mean, obviously, if it was big, it hyped the event up, but the real hype was all this online tension that had been bubbling for 4 or 5 months, and this endless conversations of who's going to destroy each other on land, and that was really what we were playing for back then. That ultimate pride of, what, for the next 6 months, people are going to respect me online. I'm not going to get told that I'm an onliner or, I'm bad at the game. Um, Compared to the current scene now, where I think people are looking at it from a much more financial point of view. I mean, especially the young and up and coming players. They've got a potential career here if they work hard and they connect with people who know how to propel them as fast as possible. Massacre, Sonic, Enigma is another up and coming youngster that I've seen really put in some great performances. And
yeah, he's great.
again, he's got the work ethic. The guy is asking questions. He wants to know the secrets of success, and it's not complicated stuff. It's just really get out there and speak to people and ask.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the work ethic thing is in a lot of areas of esports is where people lack. It's just I guess it also depends on how you brought up, because I mean we have some young guys who are very brash and think that they own the world, and then they don't really amount to anything in CS, and you get guys like Enigma, for instance, who has such a great work ethic and such a great attitude in his approach to it. And I mean that also, when you're young, a lot of what you are kind of comes from what your folks are, and
Yeah,
that means the guy's grown up in a good environment where he's had a lot of positive reinforcement and obviously a lot of slaps in the back of the head and said, "Don't get cocky, kid," kind of thing as
exactly.
well. So
Yeah,
I'm really excited actually just to bring it to Enigma to see what he does in the next 2 years, because the kid's got serious talent. I mean, he's still very raw, but I've had the opportunity to cast his games a few times, and I think he can learn a lot from playing with Shizzy, for instance. I mean, Shizzy's still got a lot to learn, but the guy's just got the raw skill. But Enigma's a guy who in 2 years' time should probably be playing in a top team if he continues his trajectory.
yeah, 100%. I agree.
Mm. Well, I mean, we got some of the Axe Real talk there. Talking about my inner fears and failures and hopes and desires, and how Telkom dashed all of them. So therefore, I made a bad video about them.
Controversy, yeah.
Yeah, no, I really didn't do that. I used publicly available information that any Muppet could find and put in a Google in a table in Google, and so be it. Hey, I couldn't legally be accused of saying anything because I only asked the question.
Put it out there. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, well, actually, I got nothing against Telkom. I mean, the thing is, they are pioneers in the space. They're the guys who started all of this becoming more of a serious thing and taking it away from it just being playing for pride thing to actually having money on the line. So I mean, they've got to be
Yeah.
applauded for that. They've done a lot for the industry. I mean, I think the area where they suffer right now is that there's other people also starting to get involved, and other big money companies involved. Like, I mean, if you look at Metal State, they got Samsung involved. I mean, you don't get much bigger than a company like Samsung. I mean, one of the top biggest companies in the whole world is
Yeah.
saying CS:GO is important to them.
No, it's very exciting. I think it's up to ante, and as you said, Telkom have been the pioneer in the scene, but now they're going to have to make a decision as to whether they are in it just to continue that community aid type scheme, or do we start competing with these guys and producing the same level of entertainment through casting and production, and upping the stakes, via tournament money. And so it's really going to be interesting to see how things unfold in the next 2 months.
Yeah, I really hope it actually brings out the best of them. That they say, "Hey, let's try to compete with it," rather than just sort of throwing their hands up in the air and saying, "Okay, well, we can't." I really do hope they use some of that 155 million rand they said is going towards esports this year to make their competition cooler. So, and I'd
That would
like
be
to see it.
nice.
It's very good for everybody if Telkom is strong, and
Absolutely, yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's just good for the whole scene. In other games too, Dota and Rocket League and whatever, FIFA. If Telkom continues to be the juggernaut, because it means they're upping the ante to fight these other guys, and yeah, it's
Competition is healthy. Absolutely.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think in esports we kind of get a little bit lost on that point. Sometimes we go like, these guys are competing with us, we're going to destroy them. Instead of going, hey, these guys are competing with us, that means that we've got a benchmark and we can be better.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
I think
Well, all the
that's
all the famous sportsmen or athletes have always had their opposite. Eh? I mean, if anyone is a StarCraft fan, Jaedong and Flash. I mean, they both of them have said they could have never got to the level that they got to unless their counterpart was as good as they were.
yeah. Well, I guess you got all those examples in any sports. What did you actually play as a sportsman? Might I ask, by the way?
I played cricket, rowing, rugby, hockey, the lot.
Geez, the works. Eh? So
Yeah,
if
but I focused mainly on rowing towards the end of high school.
sure, okay. Well, I couldn't bring up any famous Cambridge rowers. I don't know anything about
Sorry.
that, so can't do that. I could probably pull out all the rugby things and the motorsport things because that's kind of
Yeah.
where my sports experience has been. But anyway, let's talk about just not so long ago. You decided to walk away from CS and then you came back. Why'd you do that and why'd you come back?
Well, that's a pretty long story, but
We got time,
le-
mate.
yeah. Um, Basically, as I said earlier, that initial formation of that SSG lineup with Goals, Elusive, and myself, us three basically started a core in the beginning of 2004. Yeah, 2014. I'm trying to get my years on. No, sorry, the end of 2013. The beginning of 2014, we had already joined Energy. Yeah, so 2013 we had started that core, and I think everyone knows by the end of the middle of 2015, coming into both the two biggest competitions, we were definitely hyped to be the team that should win it, based on our online results, and I think also based on the fact that we had had all this experience together and we were just performing better as a team. I think Bravado, up until those last two lands, literally those last two lands, were a little bit all over the place. They always had, Demi as their star, who could really take a game away from you, and he ended up really doing that at both those lands. And but it's it definitely was it was to the point where we had put in all this time and effort over 2 years, and we had reached what we thought was the pinnacle of natural synergy. Like I knew exactly how Ruan played. I knew exactly what he was going to bring in a game, what he was going to do on a map, the sites that I took with him. Same with Ashton. A lot of those traits I haven't experienced ever again. I mean, that's how long and how well I knew these players. So it allowed you to focus on the the tiny things in the game, which made you sort of play at that level. And after the two really big disappointments in that Edgeland and ESWC in 2015, I think the group was really mentally broken, because it didn't feel like we threw our chance, but I think it felt like there wasn't another route for us, if you know what I mean. And in hindsight, that was pathetic, because I think if that team had stuck together and we had allowed, I mean, Aaron had only played 2 lands at that point, and he was finding his feet on LAN, because again, LAN is a completely different kettle of fish. If we had just stayed together, I think a little longer, we would have definitely seen success later in the year. But anyway, I basically stepped down after those 2 lands because, again, my mentality wasn't right to continue. I thought we had given all this energy into energy, and yeah, things just hadn't worked out. And I thought, okay, cool. Well, I've given it a good run. I'm going to pursue, my other passions in life. But obviously, you can't put out a burning fire. Let's be honest. I've always had an amazing fire raging inside me for CS, and I'll only quit when that dies one day. And that's basically what led me back to coming and playing again.
So, just rewinding it a little bit there, you mentioned ESWC. Talk a little bit about that, your ESWC energy experience. Obviously, it was disappointment, but
well, not all disappointment.
still an amazing
the
experience.
results. Yeah, it was the results. If you look at it in terms of a win-loss, was disappointing. But the experience was fantastic. I think, going back to that 2006 year when I went to ESWC in Johannesburg, and I remember watching DC playing and winning, and they had these sponsored Ferrari PCs, and I just thought to myself, you know what? I want to go overseas. I want to go and play against the best in the world and come back and be able to play at the level that DC is playing at. That really inspired me. So finally in 2014, I was sort of getting to that point now where I'm fulfilling that dream, and it was awesome. I mean, being able to scrim against LDLC in the week, and chat to NBK and the gents as if it was in South Africa, playing against any other team and scrimming against any other team was pretty surreal for us. And I think it propelled us, and that's partly why 2015 was so depressing. It propelled us after that tournament to a new level. I mean, we came back after ESWC and we destroyed everyone in scrims, absolutely destroyed them. And I think yeah, I mean, if you want to ignore the losses and take any positive away from that experience, is that we brought a whole lot of new stuff back into the scene, and we were very open about playing teams and showing them what we had learned, or exposing them at least to the strats that we were using. But yeah, ESWC, in terms, if we look back at the results, I think we had a really disappointing result against the Chinese team. I think they were called POW. Ashton was, I remember Ashton on the train in the morning looking at me and with this white face and just about like vomiting in his hands. That's how sick he was. And I was like, wow, this is a first international competition. We're nervous. And now we have a player who's just about to get sick. This is not really going the way I wanted it to go. But we got there, we set up the PCs, and there was issues. And these Chinese guys had literally just been playing DM for like 30 minutes. I don't know how they got there so early, but they were there. And that's when we started getting nervous, because we were like,
Chinese work
okay, we've been playing the whole week. Cool. But these guys have now got here and they've been warming up, and we're going to have to just join the server and play. So they came out firing, and we tried to take Angels and play our aggressive style that had given us success in South Africa, and we got absolutely put down. And subsequently went and had a team chat, and I think from then onwards, when we decided that we need to start playing more as a team and focus on the fundamentals that we had been building throughout the year, the results started to get better in terms of rounds won. The best being obviously our 9-round in a row comeback against Navi, where if you look back at that demo, it's frightening how so many situations, and this obviously is in CS all the time, but so many different situations could have played the other way, and Tian could have, sprayed, seized, diffusing the bomb downstairs on the T side, and we wouldn't have been money, or we would have broken their economy, and we would have gone on maybe to win another 2 rounds on T side. That would have allowed the game to be a lot closer on C2, and we had that run. So we came back, to answer your question, we came back really positive, and I think we came back most importantly inspired. We were keen to give CS:GO even more of a run,
Sure, that is pretty amazing against that level of opposition. I must say. I mean, South African teams generally haven't had good luck of going overseas, so it's interesting to hear at that point, because I mean that's the same year when Bravado went to DreamHack, if I
They
recall.
went to DreamHack a month after we got back from.
I mean,
Yes,
they must have gone with some high hopes, looking at how you guys had performed.
I'm sure they thought it was easy and that we were
Yeah,
messing
well,
around.
they managed to claim the title of the least rounds won ever in a group stage against in a major at that point, or whatever it was. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
What
well,
the
they played against Fnatic, okay, and we also only got about two. I mean, Fnatic at that stage, they were just about to become the best team ever in CS history, and trust me, playing against the Olofkrum's combination in any site at that tournament, and Mirage it was
Yeah,
it
it's not
was the most
possible.
demoralizing thing I've ever done in my life. You do not feel like you can play the game after you've played a map against that team at that point in CS.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to get to the mitigating factor there for them, but you beat me to it. I mean, that team. I mean, there was also obviously prior to the whole boost gate thing, which happened also
Yes.
at
Yeah.
DreamHack, where Olaf got boosted and they managed to get themselves back in the game, and then eventually decided to forfeit after the whole thing. And I mean, Fnatic definitely would have gone on to win that tournament had the results stood. Because I mean, there's no
Yeah.
way NIP would have been able to stand against them. But I mean, that was literally at the dawn of the Fnatic era, when everybody was saying it's going to be the envious era, and then Fnatic, in the early part of 2015, started to win everything except what was it, MLG Aspen.
Yeah. Yeah. The Olofmeister monster came to play in 2015.
Unbelievable. It's just talking about them, which is quite interesting to illustrate how BS online sometimes is. This week, Fnatic managed to lose 16-2 to Virtus Pro and then beat them 16-5 in subsequent online maps.
Yeah.
And then managed to lose 16-5 to Navi and then beat Navi 16-5 in the same evening. It's just like,
Is this in Pro League?
yeah, ESL Pro League. I'm just
Yeah,
like,
we've been so busy. I haven't unfortunately been
wow,
able to watch those games, but that's
online
crazy.
is random, man. It's just like, yeah, very, very, very strange. You won't
But
see that.
Virtus Pro are pretty famous for underachieving online. I mean, do you remember that streak in last season's Pro League? It was
Or
so dismal.
where they got relegated, and then
Yeah,
ESL contrived like a weird show match thing based on a popularity vote so that they could get back in.
exactly. That was hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
That was
bullshit.
all
Eh?
you want all those Polish fans to be angry. I don't think you want
Well,
them angry.
I mean,
They'll
Eastern
boycott the
Europeans
whole
are angry by
Katowice.
default, so you can't have them more angry.
True.
I mean, like, have you ever heard of a happy Russian? I mean, it's like
No such thing.
no such thing.
Give
Exactly.
mana.
Drop Orp Rush B.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, you guys had the whole ESWC experience. You brought that experience back. Things didn't work out for you, and you stopped playing. When you started again, was your first team that IFG defect lineup when you came back, or was it something else? I mean, I don't actually know, so I'm asking.
I'm trying to remember now. I remember that I initially coached Ian, the new Ian lineup, which was Tian, TC, Niefan, Zio, Custom, and Sonic. But that was really a brief, maybe 2 to 3 weeks until they had found their feet, and there was that then Axlan, and then I went to Axlan and Unreal. Dylan had asked me to come and play for, I think it was Clutch Kings or one of his teams that
Wasn't he
I
in
needed.
altitude at that stage?
No, I think he joined Altitude after that LAN.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I basically I was going up to Johannesburg to coach the guys, and I did in the final, and I think the semi-final stand behind them, and I was able to give input. But throughout that comp, I was in the beginning stages, I was playing, and I think that was the catalyst to me realizing that, James, this is not going to work. You've still got a lot of energy left to pour into this game, and I think it's time to get back on the road.
Well, that's good. I mean, for myself, I keep wanting to play again, and then I realize, hey, I wasn't actually all that good to start with. So probably
Well,
best.
you need to give yourself a few more years before you say things like that. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know. Well,
If you've only played the game for a year, it's a bit critical.
yeah, no, it's well, I guess it's hitting 3 years for me now, but no, it's more a case of I think I've got more value to add here than being the guy who gets wrecked. So, hey, dude,
No one likes being the guy who gets wrecked.
when you're the entry fragger, bro, your numbers are always gonna suffer. So
Yeah. No one understands the life of an entry. They're going to
yeah.
be books written.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what I always found was quite interesting about watching South African CS:GO broadcast a few years ago was that there was this perception that the entry fragger is the guy who gets all the kills, and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? This
Oh,
is
against the blind, yes, 100%.
yes, but yeah, I mean, generally, if you're lucky, you go and you get a headshot on somebody with an AK, and then you get your head ripped off and your
Mm.
teammate trades, But that's if it goes according
It's
to
it's by
plan,
far the hardest role in a competitive environment. So, especially on LAN when you're playing on a stage or if you've got a big, being streamed and you the entry, there's so much pressure on you in terms of like the mentality and the momentum early in a game. If you go up ramp or Mirage, doing a normal dry run and that guy shoots your head off, I mean, that sort of, unless you win that round, that has a bit of a weird feeling. You've got to reset yourself and say, no, don't worry. Next time I go up ramp, he's not going to do that to me again. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for entries.
Yeah, the way I always approached it really was just to basically put out whatever's happening in the game out of my mind, do exactly what the in-game leader says, and do it with utmost conviction. And I guess
Yes.
that came for me from being a musician. Like if you always the rule if you're on stage in front of a crowd of people is if you're going to play the wrong note, play it like you meant it, because nobody's going to know anyway. So you can
Yeah.
make it look like you meant that. Don't pull a funny face and go like, "Oh, I did the wrong thing" or whatever, because like noobs do that, and then it highlights the fact that you made a mistake. But
Mhm.
I kind of just thought of CS in the same way, like I'm just going to do exactly what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to do it in such a way that there's no question about it. I mean, this is the funny thing. I was the guy always fighting with the in-game lead about what we're doing, but when it
Because it
came to
affected you the most.
yeah, but when it came to okay, this is what we're doing, then it's just like literally, like I don't know. This will probably sound weird, but I'm somebody who thinks a lot. I mean, maybe this is
That's
apparent
very
in
strange.
the
Yeah,
videos
that
that
is
I
very
do.
strange.
But to be an entry fragger, you cannot think about the possibilities of what are going to happen to you when you run out of that ramp on Mirage or run into the B site on Inferno or whatever. You have to basically go like, you got to think about where your opponents can be, but not think about what could possibly happen to you if you approach it wrong. You just have to trust the in-game leader that this is the right call, that we're doing it, and that the flashes are going to come in and you're going to go
Mm.
in. It's like, it's,
Well,
I,
I, sorry to interrupt
yeah,
you.
yeah.
What I always say I mean, I've also played entry in previous lineups, and I've been next to entries, and what I always try and tell them is that an entry role is very diverse. It's not youngsters coming up see it as a very aim heavy role, and in to a point it is, but it's also 50% of creating space and playing that risk reward gamble. And that if you can take the aim duel part out of it, if you are struggling in that department, and focus on the fact that if I use my spawn correctly, if I have a deep understanding of spawns and I can create a little bit of space for the person behind me, that's going to have a massive impact in the round, and it's generally going to lead to you winning the round. I think that mentality allows people to be a lot more positive about being in that role when they're struggling with aim duels.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is again something where you die lost. And I mean, you're playing with goals right now who went through a difficult period playing entry for Bravado.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could kind of see in the way that he was playing that he was lacking confidence, and he was trying to sort of compensate for this by taking duels that were really a very bad idea at times. And it's 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 hard for a player to come back from that, because I mean I went through a bit of that myself, and it's very hard to take yourself out of this overcompensating sort of attitude that you're going to try this crazy stuff to like get over. I mean, it's like trying to get over writer's block or something like that, um, and you've got him in your team now. have you've got this long-standing relationship with goals. I mean, how did you approach building his confidence back? Because I mean, the first game that I casted of you guys was where he just went absolutely nuts and destroyed. I think it was WOG, so in ESEA. So um, clearly his confidence is back. Or it's got to have something to do with you. So spill it.
I think it's definitely a mentality thing for Ash. He is someone that plays with his heart, like on his shoulders, and I think it's very important to Ash that he has a feeling of belief within the team, and that the people behind him believe in what he's doing. And I'm not saying that when he was in Bravado that was the case at all. I'm just saying that his mentality had shifted to the point where I think he doubted whether his own decision making was good enough next to the player that he was next to, if you know what I mean. And that has you can't play CS at a high level like that, because if you start second guessing yourself, you can see it on stream very quickly when you're specking the person. He's uneasy. You can see he's jittery, he's antsy, and that sometimes is not necessarily. It hasn't all got to do with that person maybe underperforming or being antsy. It also has to do with maybe the mentality within the team and how he is playing around them. And I think hopefully, we obviously have only had Ash in the team now for a couple of weeks, and we haven't even really been able to boot camp properly. But I know the passion and energy that Ashton brings to the team, and that alone is part of the ingredients necessary to become a top team in this country. You need to have the chemistry. You need to have people who bring other people together and inspire them. And Ash is definitely one of those individuals.
Yeah, very much. I mean, people like to use the term confidence player, to compensate for if somebody does something bad and they're like, okay, his confidence is low or whatever. But Ash is, from what I'm looking at on the outside, as you say, he's an emotional player who definitely needs to be feeling it. And I think often players like that aren't always catered for by their teams. Some guys will just say like, if I could get on with it, what's your problem, dude, or whatever. But in the situation where you have a guy who plays in that way, I kind of feel as an in-game leader, you need to facilitate him, so that he can be confident. I mean, I guess on an international sense, you have a guy like Device, for instance, who famously has had all sorts of choking issues, mental issues of shutting down in big moments, and he seems to have gotten over it. And a lot of that, I think, has come from the positive reinforcement of the coach, Zonic. And obviously they have the whole sports psychologist thing, but that seems to have made a tremendous difference. Just that somebody is telling the guy like, "Hey, dude, you can do this, man. Hand on shoulder, do it, man."
Yeah. We believe in what you want to go and do and your idea. And I think that's maybe another thing that the young South African community is not really aware of, is that there are many ways of solving a problem. One of the lessons that I've also learned, growing in this CS thing, your idea is not always the only way to go about things. You need to be open to understanding your players and the way they think and where their strengths and weaknesses lie, and that is what concocts your unique combination or your recipe to success. So if a player doesn't feel that he's being taken seriously, or that his opinion has no or bears no weight, that is a kink in the chain. That's a weak point in the chain, and under pressure that will be exposed, and finally the project will be a failure. Simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot, as you said, there's a lot more elements to being a successful team and a successful player than just aim or game sense or any one thing. It's always a weird combination. I mean, you also get the players out there who maybe don't have the most mechanical skill but are a little smarter or whatever, and they make it work for them. I mean, I guess in this South African sense, I mean, you have a guy like Deviant, for instance, who had a big impact on the local scene for a long time, but catch him on a DM server, and he's not a Sonic or somebody like that, but he makes it work for himself.
Yeah, but you don't know the old Deviant.
Yeah,
like
well,
I
I
do.
only got him when he was old. I've always been old in CS, so I had to play the youngsters at age 29 and figure out how to
Yeah.
how to compete with them. So
I think for Richard, it's just a measure of time. I think his career and general life has sort of weaned CS out of things. When I first started playing CS, Richard was an absolute animal, and he was an animal mechanically in 1.6. He had incredible movement, incredible aim, and I think the reason why he struggled maybe to bring that level to CS:GO is purely a time-based thing. I think if he was in a position to commit to CS fully, like other people have been over the past few years, it would be a different situation. Put it that way.
Well, I think he also suffered from incredibly potato internet for a long period of time as well,
Yeah,
which I
he
think is
went through the
also
same woes. Yeah,
yeah.
and it plays on your mentality. I had conversations with Richard about this exact thing, and that you play online, and then how do you actually measure yourself? Because you watch your POV, and you're busy lagging, and you're responding to a situation, and in the back of your mind, well, now I'm lagging. You can't play confidence CS, firstly, okay? So then in these POVs, you're actually just looking, well, where's my positioning? Am I rotating at the right time? So there's a facet of the game there that you're missing, and that is incredibly frustrating. And it's even more frustrating for someone who only has a limited amount of time to be putting into this game in the first place anyway. If you've got more time, well, then you can focus on other things. You don't just need to focus on your 2 hours a night with your team.
Yeah, well, that's always the thing. I mean, and the time is only going to get more. So those of us, I mean, I was in the same situation with work and whatever. Thankfully, this year it's a little bit quieter, so I can do some videos and stuff. I should have started playing again. I don't know why I'm doing videos, but anyway, I guess I enjoy
Come back,
people.
come back to the dark side.
I enjoy people hating me. It's great. I feed upon the dark energy. It's wonderful. but um, but yeah, I mean, it's the time thing is only going to get worse and worse for guys who sort of part timers who got the full time job and the family and all of that. So I mean, like I imagine for guys like DC and even guys like yourself, I mean, you also got a wife and all the responsibilities and everything. It's only going to get more difficult with all the competitions
Absolutely.
that are coming
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think the DC guys already are really impressive. The mere fact that they can um, put up, and I'm talking about obviously the last LAN results at Masters. They really impressed me against Carbon on that Mirage map. If I think back to it, the fact that they can do that to a team that I know for a fact was grinding 3, 4, 5 times the hours that the DC guys were. I mean, that's incredible, and they do that not knowing that mechanically I'm not going to be able to play or stand up to this guy, but I've been playing with this guy next to me for the past 10 years, and I know him so well that there are a lot of small little things, like I spoke about earlier, when you get to play with people for the type of time, that he's going to have an edge on the younger player with. I don't have to check these little things, or I don't have to worry about that because I know he's doing this. And it just, especially in a LAN environment, it makes it very hard to beat DC, because once they start out playing you as a team, that in itself bears weight on your mentality, because these guys have been together for 10 years, they're experienced in these situations. So yeah, it's impressive.
That's almost an unspoken thing. I recall scrimming with them and then having them talking to us in TeamSpeak afterwards. I don't know if they'll even remember this, but I recall us going away going like, what the hell were they talking about? Like, we're not seeing any of the strategy that they're talking about. And it's just what we got to realize is actually it's all this unspoken stuff that they're doing. When they
Yeah.
try to articulate it, they couldn't, which is quite funny because it just speaks to how long they've been together. And what I also
It's
found
very
weird,
natural.
yeah, it's natural for them. The other very damning thing of their age and how long they've been together was Patar, the owner, well, not the owner, but he's one of the part owners of HLTV, and he's the main stats guy, actually tweeted during WSG Dubai last year that he's astounded that the DC lineup is the same one that played at ESWC 10 years before that he was
Incredible, huh?
adminning at. And he was like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Um, I just wish he'd had like pictures of them when they all had hair. That would have been.
There are some pictures circling around. I'm sure you can find some on Facebook of Riri and the boys in Paris
Yeah, I
and
just would
Poland. I'm pretty
have
sure.
loved it if he'd done like this sort of composite image of then and now kind of thing. That would have been really cool.
Yeah.
But hey, So we spoke a bit about goals. I mean, you've had this long standing relationship with him, but you've also had quite a lot of other top players that have you've played in teams with. You had Elusive, you were with Stahl and Hellhound before as well. I mean, who would you rate as the best player that you've actually been on a team with? And I mean, best is obviously subjective. So I mean, people may hate you for saying it, and they'll probably hate me for
I
asking it.
don't
But
care. Yeah,
the
really don't
fact
care.
is, you know the inner workings of the team and the interpersonal relationships and the way you played off each other, and that plays a part of it. So I mean, who was that guy for you?
Well, I've got two players because again, my mentor was Stahl, I think, and I think earlier I explained why. He definitely gave me the IGL path that I eventually took. But in terms of just general player, definitely elusive. I think I've thought Ruan has been one of South Africa, if not South Africa's best all-round player for a very, very long time. He can do just about everything. He is the ultimate all-rounder. When he was in the Carbon lineup, he was the hard carry. He was the Detrony of Carbon. When he was in Energy, he was a very supportive player who had these games where he could completely take control of the map. So that is he's played entry before. He's called. He was my second voice. I was his second voice over different months. So he literally has done everything in the game, and he does it to an incredibly high level. And that mixed with the fact that he is an incredibly intelligent guy who understands work ethic and practicing effectively. He is definitely the leader in the community currently in terms of setting the standard for what you should be doing. I know that he has recently taken CS as his primary focus in life.
Oh wow.
I think so. Yeah, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on just looking from the outside again at the completeness of his skill set. Definitely one of the very best players, and I think also what's also speaks to the kind of person he is the fact that in Rivado with the aim stars that are around him, I mean he is as capable as they are in most respects, but he's also willing to do the donkey work, which
Exactly.
a lot of
Yeah.
guys are not, and you got to respect that.
He prioritizes the team's needs over himself. So, um, he could be AWPing, he could be holding those positions on T side where you're going to get rotating kills, where you're going to have, the edge on your opponent because of your position. He could do all those roles, but I think he knows that he has his certain set of skills. His where he is above just about everyone is the fact that he can play at a very high level and also coordinate other people and make sure that things are making sense from a team perspective while again performing at a high level. And I mean he's done that and carried. He did it last year, and he'll probably do it this year as well.
Oh, we actually saw him. I think it was on one of the cash games against was it LDLC or one of those teams where he was actually the standout performer in the international travels, which I
Yeah.
think may have surprised a few people. But if you've been watching since the year before, at the very least, you would have seen him wrecking people on Carbon with meanwhile on the other side of the map, Spoof running around with the P90, doing his thing.
Doing his things, spoof things. But I
Doing
mean,
spoof things.
Ruan, if people had watched Ruan at ESWC in 2014, they would have known. I mean, when we went and boot camped for that week, he was the one who was the most comfortable by far in that scrum week that we had. And he's definitely the one who peaked to the highest level during that competition, under all that scrutiny, under all that stress. So the ingredients were there, and the signs were definitely there if people were taking note.
Just a left field question. I've been wondering this because it's been tagging at the back of my memory for a little while. There was a game, I think it was in 2015 or was it late 2014, where on Mirage, I think it was in MWeb or something, where it went into like 60 odd rounds. It was like multiple overtimes.
Yeah.
Were you in that game? I
Mm,
cannot remember. I know it was Bravado versus somebody, but I can't remember if it was you guys or DC.
not 60 rounds. I don't think I've been in a game that long.
But
not
Yeah,
60.
I don't know. It's
But
just
we had some insane LAN. I mean, the most intense best of three I've ever played in my life was in 2014 at Rage in the semi-final. And the way that things had worked out, I mean, we ourselves and Bravado were the best two teams in the country at that point. No one will doubt that or comment on that. But that semi-final was so intense to the point where, for example, on Cash, on Inferno they beat us, I think 16-12 or something along those lines, and on Cash they had an incredible start on CT side and they went 12-0 up, and I think we ended the half 12-3. When we changed over, I remember just pausing and us having a serious team chat and just saying, guys, we have a really strong CT. We know what they're gonna do. Let's just get the mentality strong and go round by round and take it as it comes. And we made it an incredible comeback, 16-13, and we carried on to the next map. It then went against us the other way, where we on Nuke started CT, won 13 rounds in a row that ended the half 13-2, and probably that last round that we lost towards the end of the first half probably would have won us the game in hindsight if we had just played it properly.
But yeah,
But
fuck that old map, man. That map was messed up, dude. 13-2 was like
it was very crazy.
all
It was
day,
very
every
crazy.
day on that map. Eh?
But Bravado again then switched the mentality, and when they got onto the CT side, came back, and we ended up drawing the game. Another note, a reference point, I talked about TC having that moment with C's downstairs on Nuke with the smoke, and him being just, if you go watch the demo, his spray is just missing this guy on red HP. He had an exact situation like that with Deviant, where we were, I think it was 15-14 to take the game to go to the final. All he had to do was spray Deviant, and I think he put him on 1 HP, and he defused the bomb and went to overtime.
Oh.
So Lighters was in tears after that game. Like, that's the type of intensity that we were at, because you could see the rivalry was so fierce at that point, and both teams were so good in their own right that it just was an incredible game, and I think it will go down in CS:GO as definitely one of the best semi-final knockout games in this country has produced by far.
I need to actually go back and watch it again, because
yeah, it was casted by Congo, Kyle, and Nate, I think.
Yeah, Burning Red.
Sure. Yeah.
I need to actually go back and watch it. I actually watched it at the time and recall being all breathless, but I'm trying to remember this 1 HP thing. I'm actually not.
It's the only time in my life that I aced, and I didn't even realize I aced. I was so caught up in the moment about just trying to focus on the next round and winning that people say that, like, after the game, dude, you aced in overtime. I was like, what? What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
But you just had a good round. It must have been a 3K or 4K or something.
No,
we just
I
killed
don't
them.
ace. What do you mean?
Yeah, geez. Well, I actually need to go. I'm talking about that crazy like overtime game that I've somehow confused with you guys. I think it was actually DC, but actually Congo also casted that. So I think it was Congo and Honey that casted it or something. I was actually going to ask him about it, because I recalled it was actually on HLTV for being like the longest.
So that's game. That's crazy.
Overtime game yet. It was because the rules in that Arena competition were slightly retarded, and no slight on them.
People hosting it.
But I think it was just an oversight. It's like one of those things where you think, okay, well, we won't. It's not so bad, because it was
not possible.
It was MR5 16K, and that just sets itself up for like being the repeated game that lasts forever, because it's too much money in too many rounds. So it's just that, like, it went on for forever. Like
the mind games at at that point in the game is just disgusting.
Because it actually got stupid to the point where I was thinking, okay, well, it's now like 1 o'clock in the morning or something. This game really needs to be over. But I mean, kudos to Carl for continuing to cast it, because I mean, by that point I would have been like, guys, I've got to go to work. You continue to have your game. I'll see you guys for the next one. Because I've just been like, no. This is getting stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, thankfully in CS, of course, the standard, I think also 2014, 2015 in general, CS, we were still trying to figure out what's a good format for overtime. Because, I mean, there was also a competition at some point where I recall it was 10 rounds per half in overtime, and that was just like the most stupid thing I mean, like, never go full retard, and whoever made that one up really did. So it was just like, you know, that's not gonna help. We're gonna be here all day. It's like watching a best of 5 in one game. But
No,
anyway,
it gets too tedious after a while, and I think that economy thing is ridiculous as well. The current format is actually pretty good. I
yeah,
don't
the
really
the
have an
MR3
issue with.
10K I
Yeah,
think is good. It
yeah,
was I don't know if you watched I Am Katowice, but it was quite interesting. They had this
yeah. I
sort of
did.
tiebreaker thing after the group stage. Instead of playing a full match, they did like literally an MR3 10K game to actually break the tie, which is quite surprising, like a penalty shootout for Counter Strike.
I think that's the way forward. It's lacquer.
I
It's
think it's
good.
good. I mean, if
I
it
think
is,
round difference is a load of rubbish.
I absolutely agree. I mean, like, you got to feel for the Bravado boys against, or was it Signature, the Thai team, where
Yeah,
they
yeah.
lost
It
on
was
round
rough.
difference. It was
Very rough.
rough considering their performance was so good. But yeah,
Mm.
that's life, man. Life is rough. But
Everything happens for a reason without sounding like too much of a triago.
I usually go with the reason of because I probably did that to myself. But
I made those choices.
yeah, kind of. But I mean, we spoke about some of the best players. I mean, you're one of the better IGLs. I mean, and I'll say this having played against you as well. I mean, you are somebody who does think about your approach a lot, and you can see it in the way that your teams play. Um, your style as an IGL, are you one of those guys who's sitting and watching a demo for any slight little twitch out of the other team, seeing their tendencies and trying to anti-strat them in some way, like Sean Gear's style? Or are you somebody who's just looking more for overall tendencies, or do you just focus on what your team's doing and your own preparation?
So initially, my my way of thinking was basically to understand your players to a point where you can create a style around that instead of going and watching countless demos of your opposition. And I think that got us to a certain point, and I think what I've tried to now incorporate is to be a bit more balanced, where I am just focusing on my team, but I'm also going and having a look at what the other good teams are doing, as you said, what their tendencies are, and then just making sure that I have an answer to it. If a certain team is strong at doing something, do I either ignore it or do I figure out something to break it? That's always one of the questions I ask myself during games, in terms of how we respond to things that we're struggling with. But in terms of my leadership style, yeah, I am someone who likes structure. Not to say that I don't like chaos, because as a player, I'm naturally prone to playing a bit more aggressive. I prefer um, creating the chaos than being in the chaos. I know there are other players who are the opposite, but that's me. And I think you need to make sure that as an IGL, you aren't too readable. And I think that's maybe one of the weaknesses of being structured and making sure that you instill this, guys, let's make logical decisions. Let's make sure that if I'm doing something, another teammate, first of all, understands what I'm doing and is complimenting me or them. I don't accept people just, unless we've already discussed it and they're doing something that is going to have an impact on it. I don't really accept someone just going off and dying and there being no logic to it whatsoever. That does irritate me, and I think that's something that I've always tried to wean out of a team. Like if we're going to do something, let's make sure that it makes sense and that we all are on the same page. Because in my experience, if everyone is on the same page and everyone understands each other from the way they play, the way they think, their general natural style, that allows you to focus on the small things in CS. And again, CS is about the small margins really at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. The tiny percentages, the little differences in timing, all of
Yeah.
those things make a huge difference. Of course, when you're on the receiving end of the tiny difference in timing, it doesn't feel so good. But
No, it can be hard to get a perspective of what is really. It's sometimes a game that is 16-8, 16-10. That can be a much closer affair than what the the scoreline says.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also when clutches don't go your way, those sorts of things, or again the unlucky timings. For instance, I mean, again, if I look at my own experience, I would often play off spawns as an entry player, and sometimes we'll go, okay, well we're going to do this later in the round, but first have a run off your spawn and see what you can do, kind of thing. And you're going like, yeah, I'm super confident. Here I go, and the other guy also had a good spawn, and you get shot in the face. It's like,
Yeah, but
okay,
it's
well,
it's clever to start playing like that because you want to be able to play as loosely as possible for as long as possible, if you know what I mean. Especially on T side, you want to be able to make use of your spawns until CTs get to a point where they can punish you just really via equipment, because you've got that time frame. I mean, if you win the pistol, if you get the first gun round, you can still make them fragile for a certain amount of time till the point where that round bonus kicks in and they start getting to these, molly, nade, smoke, flash. It makes it tough just playing loose. You've got to be more structured. You've got to be more on page about what decisions we're making, because that has effects across the map in terms of rotations, and so it becomes more complex in that regard. And yeah, I think it's something that definitely Energy and Bravado and APG, XCC are starting to take more seriously, making sure that they are incorporating not just these loose player styles, but that they have an answer for teams that have a good economy and that can manipulate them with equipment. Yeah.
Yeah, that is an important point that you mentioned. If we rewind a little bit there about being looser earlier in the round, it's also what I saw, the evolution of watching, casting a lot of CS last year, which was quite interesting. Is initially I saw a lot of teams being very loose, and I'm talking about the very top teams, of course, because these are the guys that you end up casting the most, so you have the biggest sort of sample pool to look at, and to me, it started out being quite loose, and as I watched through the year, and even leading into this year, it's become a much more, all of them are playing a lot more structured than they were last year, which is something you alluded to as well. And in that, what I saw is as it became more structured, that sort of early around aggression stopped happening for a lot of these teams, which I think kind of detracted a little bit from, when you got all that skill in your lineup, you do also just want to throw a little wild card in there sometimes and let a guy try play something based off of spawn and see if he can make something happen. And I'm glad to see that
Absolutely.
that's coming back this year. Like, because often, I mean, myself and Nate would talk behind the scenes of a game where we're gonna cast Carbon versus Bravado, and we know that almost 95% chance the three maps will probably be Cobble, Dust 2, and Cache. And it's basically every map that involves a crazy aim battle is what they'll play. But then the style that they played was, okay, we're going to sit in our spots in this default, watch these angles on T side until there's 40 seconds left, then we're going to assemble and go to a bomb side without having taken any control or had actually gained any information. And I think it's good to approach the game that way and say, okay, well, we're going to play a strong default. That's good, but if you don't gain anything from the default, then you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. And I teams probably don't like me saying this, but this is how I saw it from watching them play. And towards the end of last year, I saw them doing more with it, rather than just sort of sitting. But it was actually hard to cast because you're watching two teams who have all this explosive power not doing anything for a very long period. Whereas if you take the same example from like a Navi or somebody, I mean, that's obviously the example everybody uses for a team that plays very slowly or for default. They will play very slowly, but they'll still try to get some information, gain some map control and ground. And I wasn't seeing that out of our teams as much last year, but this year it's definitely changed.
Mm. It's changed because I think the skill level has also changed. The average player can aim, and the average player knows a little bit about the game. He's watching more CS. He's maybe understanding the strategical point of the game to a higher level. And coming back to loose versus structured, I think the majority of people also need to understand that a team is going to play as loose as they can play until they need to respect the fact that we can't play loose anymore. And you want to play like that because I think in terms of mentality and momentum, it feeds, especially in a land-in situation, it feeds to the hype and people just taking that adrenaline and bursting through their own skill ceiling and just performing at a really high level because the mentality is so good. So the only reason you see teams fall back to this more structured play is because they're forced to, firstly, and secondly, in those defaults, what you're supposed to be getting out of them are things like noise cues, equipment that is being used across the
Baiting
map,
out the
because
nades and
baiting out, there we go. So, and most importantly, transferring all that information, especially from your pillars, to a central point, and that is normally two players in your team that have that voice that guides you and makes those mid to late round decisions where you'll end up on a site, hopefully, that has just had a rotation, that guys is a little antsy now because he's unsure of what's going, because the guy was positioned in a place or got map control to the point where you could hear that guy rotating off, and that allowed for the timing to be perfect for them to hit that side. That's what the defaults are supposed to be about, because these guys have got as good aim as we have. We're going to have to get them out of their natural comfort zone to be able to win the round. And that's why you see international teams play the way they play. I mean, it's very, you can see the Danish gents, it's very explosive, especially in North, until a certain point, until Convict and Magic Boy have been shut down. And, it's not just an Angel or a Brawl. It's now we need to make a calculated call here and force a rotation and then make a better decision later.
Yeah, North is a really good example of that. Astralis also, I mean, they're a little looser than they were at some points. I mean, that's the funny thing. If you look at teams like Astralis and SK, for instance, people have this perception that they're incredibly tightly structured, and they are to a point. But with insane skill that they have,
within reason,
they're also structured in the way that they allow space for somebody to go nuts. I mean, look at Kirby saving Astralis basically on train in the major final, and I mean he's done it repeatedly. But talking about rotations and defaults and that sort of thing, what's also interesting if you watch like a team like Astralis versus local teams, and we haven't seen too much Inferno. We probably will see it this year, but I was watching them on Inferno versus zerOch the other night in ESL Pro League, and I mean, this is not unique to Inferno or unique to Astralis. It's something that most of the top international teams do. But you'll see them say, for instance, they've got the bomb towards A, they're going to probe towards A, bait out some equipment, they move wholesale, including the bomb, back towards B, bait out some equipment, they play around that side, try to force their way in, don't go in, rotate back to A again, play around there, but in 20 seconds, 30 seconds on the clock, they go back to B and they execute and they take the site. And SA-wise, I don't see that level of motion on a map just yet. It's
because it requires a lot of time to play like that.
It's incredible coordination, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the next thing that I was going to there. Like, I don't think we yet have the time in the game and the level of analysis available just yet. But I think that sort of style of motion in the team the whole time is something, we see more static play in terms of our defaults here than international teams do. And I personally think, again, watching as a caster, because I watch from the analysis point of view, I try to see how the teams are moving around as opposed to just who's shooting who in the head. That's my job, of course. Personally, when I see more of that happening, I'm really going to go like, hey, South Africa's really... Suddenly we've jumped up another level here in terms of the way the calling is happening. I mean, am I being crazy in thinking that way, or?
I think there are a few teams in the country who I think you're wrong. I think they are playing like that. They definitely have the mentality of a default is not just spread out and go and sit and hold a position. A default is there needs to be many objectives in the default. So whether it is let's call it an A default or a B default, okay? A default being the one we use to go and get a certain amount of control that allows us to put a player in a position where he is going to hear noise cues in X and Y, okay? Or a B default where we're going to get a player into a position that does exactly the same thing. So it's what is the correct word? It's energetic. It's not stagnant. It's not supposed to. It's definitely not people sitting back and just chilling and waiting for people to do crazy pushes or that might be your defensive default, but generally defaults are supposed to achieve something, and generally by the 1 minute 50-second mark, you need to have the information you went out and looked for, so that by the time later on comes and you need to make a decision on the site you go to and breach, it's an informed one that you're going to have an advantage going into. Simple as that.
Absolutely. So just in mitigation of what I just said, and also tying into some of what you said, I do feel like the availability of demos and things like that are still a problem in South Africa in terms of studying your opponents, and also I mean, we're talking about international teams that have an oh, it's very late at night. Sorry, guys. It's that have an analyst working for them, and somebody who's able to actually sit and make this their job to actually look at what other teams do and bring that information to the in-game leaders and the coach so that he can do something with it. I mean, we don't have that level of support structure in South Africa, which I think also means that our achievements on the international stage are actually more notable because of that. But I mean, I don't think we should use that as an excuse, but I do feel with
It is a problem, though. I
it
agree with
it
you.
is a problem.
I
I
agree
mean,
with you.
like guys like
Because
Bravado,
currently,
they've got a coach, but I mean, you don't have a coach.
yeah. So currently, I think ESEA has allowed us to that privilege of being able to go to the website, and then if you have a scrim, you can download it. And a lot of the teams that I've mentioned earlier, we plan games like that. We plan to go and do a map, and then we can get the demo, we can analyze, and it's generally for yourself. It's to have a look at your own team and their coordination, how people are responding to certain calls. That system needs to be put into and without making myself sound like an idiot, a Telcom server or a general public server that is free, because I know Billowsoft also allows you to go and get the demo, but for example, the Masters servers, which are good servers and they're used a lot, they don't have that. There's no maybe the admins of the servers have access to every single game that gets played on there, but it's definitely not as accessible as it is if you play on ESEA, and that's a problem, because
Absolutely.
I think I absolutely agree with you, and I think that for the scene to progress as fast as it can, when Bravado and Energy play against each other, both teams should be allowed to go and download the demo and assess where did we go right, where did we go wrong. Simple.
Absolutely. I think the other thing that could also be useful, but I mean, this is maybe another discussion for another time, is software like Stats Helix, for instance. I mean, you guys have some involvement with them as F3, but I don't think it's not freely available in South Africa's teams.
No,
And
I've actually been in conversation with Hector, the owner of F3, to get us on board on that, because I really feel that would give us a massive edge. I mean, I love statistics, and I feel that I could incorporate that definitely into our team, and hopefully, I mean, that could potentially even give us an edge. With regard to TC and Bravado and him being a coach, I think he's an incredible asset to Bravado. It's everyone knows that he's a really intelligent human being, and his experience mixed with his just good logic, I think, gives Bravado a huge edge in the future.
yeah, absolutely. Well, let's hope in the next year or two, maybe we have this conversation again, and everybody's got Stats Helix on their machine, and everybody's got a
Heard it
coach
here
and an
first.
analyst and a sports psychologist and a masseuse.
The last one being the most important.
Absolutely. I mean, shoulders
Happy
need
ending
tens,
for everyone.
I didn't say a time masseuse, bro.
Yeah, sorry, I've got horrific experiences from Thailand, my word. If anyone ever goes to Thailand, never ask for a massage there. It is absolutely terrible. I've got back problems along with Elusive dropping me on my back. Thailand also gave me back problems that I'm going to live with for the rest of my life.
It's because of that lady boy running laps on your back, bro.
Just don't stop, okay? I don't want to think about it. Don't want to think about it. It's done. It's over. It was 2 years ago.
So I mean, finally we're gonna. This is late already, guys. I mean, it's properly late, and both him and I should both be drunk by now, and instead we're sitting doing this for your viewing pleasure, because it's weekend.
I went for a few beverages at lunch, so
okay.
I'm well relaxed.
Okay, well that's good to hear. So while you relax, F3 this year. I mean, you guys. I think you guys could have done a lot better had you all had better internet. And I mean, people have not been super complimentary of F3 on stream and on social media. They seem to have some sort of perception that you guys are maybe a little bit weaker this year or something. And I don't think they quite understand the mitigating factors there. However, the internet aside, I mean, what is the ceiling for F3 this year? I mean, are you guys going to be a top four team in your mind, or are you guys in a building phase? Is next year your year? What how is it for F3?
Yeah, look, I don't think we should. The lag is a factor, but it's definitely not. It's not the only problem. I think we are, as I said to you earlier, we went through three different players in 3 months, and we had a huge amount of energy after Rage to, put I to work over the holidays, and everyone else in the team sort of agreed that we were really going to grind December to put ourselves ahead of the pack for the new year. And losing those players to different circumstances after we had worked so hard with them was really demotivating. And I think Ash came into a team that maybe our mentality wasn't the best it could have been at the time. So we definitely are in a rebuilding phase in terms of those basic necessities that you need to have as a team. Most importantly, being your mentality and keeping the environment such that everyone can perform to their best level. And there are a few things in that, but I won't really delve into it. In terms of our progression this year, I think once we have had the opportunity to boot camp, which is going to probably be in the next 2 weeks, where we can really just like sit around a table, talk about the general ideas, and just discuss CS and how we're going to deal with stuff. I think we absolutely are going to be contenders for the top 3 spot, and I would put my money on the fact that we will be in the final sometime this year. And everyone knows that when you're in a final, anything can happen. So who knows?
Yeah, well, that's bold, but I'd have to. I mean, again, looking at the pieces that you got, it's incredibly possible. I mean, some people go, "Oh, no, that'll never happen" or whatever, but opinions are
Well,
what they are.
they are very uninformed if it's that extreme, 100%, because we've got players who have a proven track record of performing at an incredibly high level on LAN, and we've got a mixture of young up and coming talent. So I don't understand how that can't be a good combination.
I don't know. Hate is gonna hate, mate. That's how it's gonna be. So, nah, I think you guys have got a good chance this year. I mean, I was asked for predictions of the season, or for Masters anyway, in an article, and I mean, you guys are one of the teams that I said are one of the teams to watch this year. And so far, I mean, the results haven't quite borne it out. But you have the right sort of elements, as you say, the mixture of age and young beauty. No,
There we go.
no,
Yeah.
you got
Essica,
yeah,
our
well,
little beauty.
the you beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should do a video with him actually. I mean, that'd be interesting. Let's talk
You
about your
actually
career.
should. You should, because he is a very misunderstood individual, and sometimes I feel sorry for him, and sometimes I want to give him a proper clap across the head. But mostly, I have a huge amount of respect for the youngster. I mean, he has a fantastic attitude within the team environment. He is highly competitive, and he is without a doubt going to be a player who is, as I said earlier about Enigma, will be successful because he has the drive and he wants to be the best. Simple as that. He's going to do anything he can to be the best. Um, Obviously, he has a lot of growing up to do. I think everyone, if they're honest with themselves, knows that when we were 15 or 16, we were all assholes. I mean, come
We're
on.
all twats.
And
That's
we didn't have to play or deal with people who were, 10, 15 years older than us. So I think it's a very hard social dynamic for Dean. But I must say, from the moment I took him on board with our team, he's been very impressive. I mean, he's dealt with the pressure of his first LAN at Rage and performing the way he did. I don't think I've ever seen someone play their first LAN and perform to the level that Dean did. So he's got a very bright future, and yeah, I'm pretty excited to see where he goes.
Yeah, I must echo that sentiment as well. I think also, with some players, they have a huge amount of humility, and that's kind of what carries them through. He's got this sort of brashness about him that I think is great. It's
Yeah.
this confidence. I mean, some people would call it arrogance, but I don't think it's really that. It's just self-confidence,
He believes in
saying,
himself.
I'm going to
Yeah.
take this fight and I'm going to win this fight. And I mean, that's what the best players always
You have to have that mentality. Absolutely. Yeah.
Some people don't voice it out loud. He's the one who voices it out loud, and that
Mm.
makes people upset. But
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I can attest. I recall playing against him a year or two ago in pickups and going, "What the fuck is this kid? Like he's just tuning me, like chirping me the
Yeah.
whole time. What the hell?"
I had the
It's
same
like,
experience. Don't worry. Don't worry.
but I mean, it's amazing to see how well he's done, and I mean, some of those rounds that he won for you guys at Rage was pretty impressive stuff. Again, I mean, you could take into account his age and everything.
First LAN, huge
Yeah.
amount of pressure, been subject to all the online nonsense that he had been. You think about all the how many factors were playing into that, and he just was a champion. He ignored it and he believed in himself and he performed. And I mean, Neo is the best example. If you look at the international scene, one of the most humble people that I've ever met. And if you check him in interviews, he doesn't like doing interviews because he's awkward and his English isn't that great. But he will never. Someone will say you are the best player in the world, and he'll be like, "Yeah, well, there's Forrest," and he was famous for doing that. But I can guarantee you, in his head, when he joins that server, he knows he's the best, and that's the only way you can play to that level. You need to believe in yourself. You need to know that you are the best. Otherwise, don't even think you're going to win that match. That is the starting mentality. Without that, you've already lost.
Absolutely. Well, and on that sage bit of advice, I do thank you for your time, Mr. James zerOch4Nce.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for
It's
having me.
really been illuminating. I think a lot of people would have learned a lot about Counter Strike and some of the thought behind it, which is awesome. So I really appreciate your time, man.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much again for having me.
Cool, man. Well, thank you, viewers, for watching it. Thanks for sticking with us for an hour and 40 minutes. That's a new record, I think. No, wait. I think I got one that's 145. So either we figure
We
out
should have
something to
gone on
talk about.
longer.
Yeah, I mean, geez, what are we going to have to
I
figure
think we
out?
need to. We need to be the longest one, surely.
See, your drive to win coming out here again.
Have to be the best.
Well, how about this? In my heart, Senpai, you are the best.
Oh, I'm melting. I'm melting on this chair. No, thank you very much, Mike. Please keep working as hard as you're working. I think a lot of people appreciate the different side that you're bringing to these podcasts, and yeah, thoroughly entertaining. Keep it up.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. And on that bombshell, kind words said to the axe. Axe is out.